Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today is 16th of July and the topic today is cerebral palsy and mental retardation. Cerebral palsy is quite common neurological disorder in children and it's a static encephalopathy, non-progressive, permanent disorder of posture and movement in which mainly results events occur during perinatal or postnatal life, especially during the first year of life when the brain is immature. And mainly the areas involved, they are the motor areas. Incidence is very high, especially in developing countries like Pakistan, and almost 6 to 7 per thousand live birth. And prevalence also quite high with 500 cases per 100,000 population. Most of the cases etiology we don't know, but the most common cause is the perinatal events, especially the hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy in our country is the most common cause of cerebral palsy. So we call it, this is an intrapartum event. Even it can be prenatal hypoxia before the delivery in utero. So mostly these are the perinatal events. Prematurity is the second most common cause, but prematurity in advanced and developed country, this is the most common cause, but in our setup still we have the hypoxia at the time of birth or even before birth is the most common cause. In premature cases, especially if the premature patients they are less than 28 weeks, they are at a high risk of getting intraventricular hemorrhage, which in the next 4 to 6 weeks can lead to the periventricular leukemia, and that results in diplegic spastic cerebral palsy. Another very common cause of cerebral palsy in children is infantile CNS infections. So risk factors, as we can discuss quickly, that antenatal prematurity is the most common intrauterine infection or multiple gestation with pregnancy complication, and perinatal birth asphyxia is very common to cause cerebral palsy. Postnatal you can have trauma or CNS infections. And what could be the obstetrical care which can prevent all these complications, especially with the good management of preeclampsia like magnesium, treating infection aggressively in mother, and avoiding premature labor by giving corticosteroid can help reduce the risk of cerebral palsy. Predisposing factor, quickly, it could be premature birth, IUGR, vascular disease, or any stress in utero, and it could be any intranatal or postnatal factors which leads to development of cerebral palsy. So there might be some window of prevention like treating the mother infection aggressively or eclampsia, but if you don't treat aggressively and then you end up by having a CP. And other causes could be just a developmental migrational defect of the brain. I mean, we call it congenital malformation of the brain, which could lead to also the cerebral palsy in children. But ultimate, if you miss the window of prevention or even the window of repair, mean if you don't able to treat CNS infection quickly, then you have a motor and cognitive disabilities and what we call it a CP child. Classification of cerebral palsy, mostly they are motor and spastic diplegia are the most common, like 35% cases, and prematurity causing that because of IVH and periventricular echinacea. Spastic hemiplegia and quadriplegia, they are the second most common types of cerebral palsy. So if you see what could be the brain affected in different parts of CP, I mean if you have mainly cerebral cortex, then you have a stiff muscle like spasticity associated with damage or developmental differences in the cerebral cortex. If you have basal ganglia involved, then you have dyskinetic movements, and if you have cerebellum involved, then you have ataxia picture with poor balance, and you could have multiple brain involvement leading to the mixed form of cerebral palsy. Motor types, as we discuss, mostly they are spastic, but they could be dyskinetic, like involvement of basal ganglia, or they could be involvement of cerebellum resulting in ataxic or mixed. But mostly the cerebral palsy is a issue with the motor areas. If you see the degree of involvement in monoplegia, there is only one limb involvement. Generally, these patients they have good prognosis with physiotherapy, and in hemiplegia, you have one side of the half of the body is involved, and in these cases, sometimes the upper limb is involved less than the lower limbs, or could be vice versa. Diplegia, mostly the lower limbs involved, and they are symmetrically involved. And in quadriplegia, you have all four limbs involved. Mostly these patients they are bedridden. They have also complication of the bedridden like bed sores, urinary and stool issues, and they are not dependent themselves. So I mean these are the mostly patient who has poor prognosis in the long run. They have nutritional issues, vision and hearing issues, and severe mental retardation as well. And also they may have multiple fits and lot of other issues which we will discuss in the future slides. I mean, the most common associated defects they are the behavioral disorder, could be sleep, and that may need referral to the developmental pediatric consultant. They have intellectual impairment, breathing difficulties. Mostly they have respiratory recurrent infections, and which may need multiple uh, hospital admission and treatment of infection, and also need lot of chest physiotherapy like nebulizer and other respiratory care. They may have stool or urinary issues, unable to walk. They may have fits. They are sometimes unable to talk, and they have lot of language issues. Also, sometimes they have lot of saliva dribbling from the mouth, and maybe sometimes you have to supplement the treatment with some medication to reduce the secretion, like glycopyrrolate. It comes in the form of rubinol. Visual impairment, mostly these patients they need hearing and visual aid. So how you diagnose a cerebral palsy? So you have a history and physical exam, and then you evaluate clinically, plus you supplement your diagnosis with EEG if patient has fits, and CT MRI like brain imaging. But mostly they present with the feeding and respiratory problem, convulsion, irritability, lethargy, behavioral issues, aggressiveness, jitteriness, and they may be just comatose like in spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. So what could be the treatment option for CP? They can be managed with medication, lot of equipment like a lot of occupational therapy they need, and you can advise them alternative therapies like hydrotherapy, uh, and they need physical as well as occupational therapy, and some patient they may need surgical options. So non-surgical options, you can use some medication to relieve the symptoms of cerebral palsy Like I have given you example of anticholinergics, glycopyrrolate. You use the medication to treat infections, to treat convulsions. Also, sometimes you give medication like baclofen by mouth or by injections to treat their spasticity. You may need some orthopedic or orthotics, and also you need aggressive PT and OT, physical and occupational therapy. So if you go through the basics of treatment for cerebral palsy, obviously the physical and occupational therapy, they are at the top, and they need lot of speech and language help, and also they need a lot of assistive technologies like walkers, crutches, wheelchairs. Medication we discussed before, and sometimes you need to operate on them to relax the taut muscles, lengthening tendons, replacing tight tendon with looser ones, and a lot of other orthopedic procedures, or even hearing and vision aid implantation. Medication they may need, as discussed before, anticholinergics, anticonvulsant, antidepressant sometime, and muscle relaxant like baclofen. They need lot of equipment. The most common equipment they carry is the feeding tubes and hearing aids. And the most important thing in the management of cerebral palsy to give them a good nutrition with good physical therapy, and also sometimes they need behavioral therapy, and other than the physical and occupational therapy, and surgical options definitely is not part of these lectures. So we'll come to the second topic of the day, which is mental retardation, defined as cognitive performance that is 2 standard deviation below the mean of the general population. Prevalence in Pakistan is quite high, around 4%, and in 25% cases you don't have any cause, and in 75% cases have some cause to blame. Normally, intelligence is measured in terms of intelligence quotient, which we call it IQ, and classification of mental retardation. You can have mild, moderate, or severe, or profound mental retardation. I mean, these patients, mild and moderate, they are trainable, but severe and profound patients, they are non-trainable, and they are dependent uh, for rest of the family members for their daily activities, and sometimes this is a major issue. If you go through causes of mental retardation, mostly they are the causes as we discussed in cerebral palsy, plus they could be chromosomal disorder like Down syndrome, Fragile X, Klinefelter, or Prader-Willi. They could be have thyroid issues, or they can have any developmental migrational defects by birth. They can have inborn errors of metabolism. The most common is phenylketonuria. And another very important cause of mental retardation is familial. The rest of the causes we have discussed already in the causes of cerebral palsy. But mostly you can divide them in two groups: organic or cultural or familial mental retardation. This group is very important, which includes family history of mental retardation, economic deprivation, inadequate child care, poor nutrition, and parental issues. Clinical presentation is the most common in mental retardation is failure to achieve developmental milestones at appropriate age for age and sex, deficiency in cognitive functioning such as inability to follow command or direction, failure to achieve intellectual developmental markers, and sometimes they are very aggressive, irritable, and difficult performing self-esteem skills. Diagnosis depend on history, physical exam, including neurological, detailed exam, developmental assessment, and you can run some investigation like urine and blood exam to rule out metabolic disorder, and also you can do some cytogenetics, and even perinatally you can advise amniocentesis or chorionic villus sampling and definitely for any mentally handicapped patient you need hearing and speech evaluation. Mental retardation basically is not a disease, it's a condition. What does it mean? That you have to treat the family as well other than the child, and you have to adopt behavioral management. This is the most important in the management of mental handicapped children. You need environmental supervision, monitoring the child development needs and problems, and also you need to put them in different programs, and also you need to evaluate for ongoing overlapping psychiatric disorder like ADHD, and also you need family therapy and early intervention programs for children younger than 3 years. You have to give them treatment for pervasive developmental disorders also, and also you need to teach the needed skill like to foster productivity, to foster independence, so they will not dependent for daily life on other family members, educational and behavioral management, and also you need to tell them living and self-care skills uh, by task analysis, and also obviously you need to train them because they are handicapped in communication skills, so you have to help them in that aspect as well, and you need lot of community and sportive interventions. But mostly, if you have a milder form of mental retardation, you give them behavior instructions and early intervention programs, and these children they may go to the mainstream schools with a mild mental retardation. But if it is moderate or severe, then sometime other than the behavior instruction, you need to give them drugs to control their aggressiveness, irritability, and mostly they cannot go to the mainstream school and they are at home. So please, this is the end of our session today, and if you have any question, please ask me freely. Thank you for your attention.